Okay, so here we are, we're back again, and we're going to be discussing lesson 4 from Dot B in this session. Hi, Richard.
Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, lovely. And we're really lucky in this session to have Chelsea with us, who works in a school, and particularly with year 11 to 18. And she's going to be sharing some of her experiences with this lesson. And of course, just a reminder that what we're exploring together in these sessions is how we teach them differently. It's not that one size fits all and we're all going to be doing it exactly the same all around the country or around the world. So just really lovely to hear your experiences, Chelsea, as well as Richard's in this session, and I shall pitch in where I can as well. So one of the things I'd be interested to know is what are the main teaching pieces for you, Chelsea?
I think first off, thanks for having me. We love this session, the being here now and reacting to responding. It's really difficult for us because there are only two of us at my school to teach the entire course in one go for an entire year group, and we embed it in the PSHE program. And so one of the things that we do is we have to split the course in two, and this is the beginning of the second part of the course, the carousel. And one of the things that the students really love is meditation, and then they come back with something that they absolutely love as well, and that's mindful eating.
So that's really interesting. You said about the fact that you finished there after you've done lesson 3 and you have meditation, because last week Richard and I were talking about the fact that actually if you were just going to teach 3 lessons, we were talking about maybe potentially having a pause there, weren't we?
Mm.
And so we can really see how that would work great, in a really great way in terms of giving a bit of an introduction and then having a break and then going back to it. And it's really lovely as well to hear that they really enjoy both of those sessions. So in terms of setting this lesson up, what do you normally do?
Well, the work begins several days beforehand, really. And this is one of the ones where we do start communicating with house. We're in a boarding school. We start looking at the allergy lists. We start looking at ingredients. We communicate with house that we've been through the lists. We've considered food allergies, and also just want to make sure that if eating is a problem for any of the students, for whatever reason, that we're just made aware if we need to be made aware, and that the students are aware of what's coming. I think it's just really important that they have a heads up. Um, it's really important also to give a deadline to house or to the pastoral team, just so that they know when you need to know by, because otherwise you might be waiting for a while. So after that, we get the food, chop it up if it's something that gets chopped up. As I said, we like Percy pigs at my school. It's just something that the students can't really access very often. Sometimes we'll do fruit. It depends. We will have students that are vegan. We do need to be aware of the fact that some students will have diabetes, and it is important to make sure that house knows what's going on and that we're aware of what the protocols are. And so we just really enjoy getting all of that set up and making sure that all of the adjustments that we may need are known in advance.
Yeah, thank you. You're just making me think there about kind of choices. How many choices do you offer?
Well, it's interesting. I went on a training program not too long ago with Miss, looking at ways that we can accommodate students with SEND and also bringing trauma awareness to our practice. And one of the things that I think you might have said, Faiy, was just the idea that um, giving one alternative is probably about as much as people need. I think that over the course we do give them other alternatives that they can come back to, but we don't want to overwhelm them. So some students may decide just to participate in some of the sensory work around the mindful eating, maybe the smells, maybe the textures, maybe even sound, whatever sound Percy pigs make or fruit makes, and just giving them that freedom to do so. I do keep them in rows so that they don't feel like they're being watched by others, and so that they really feel empowered to make those choices for themselves.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I totally agree with you about having them in rows. I think it's you don't want them to feel like they're being observed while they're doing this practice. That's really key. Thank you for sharing that. Just wanted to come to you, Richard. What choices do you normally offer?
Well, to be honest, this is one of the lessons. It's why it's so nice to have Chelsea here, because this is one of the lessons that I don't really change that much. I still, I was teaching it yesterday, so Oh, hang on, you can't see it. I've got that, and I've got that. And I find they work really well. And what I do is I guess I'm a bit more traditional in this sense, because I would only offer an alternative if I see that there is an allergy. If there's not an allergy, then I just go with it. And yesterday there weren't any allergies. There were boys that didn't particularly like the chili. But interestingly, I was going to say that yesterday I had a more negative experience in one of my lessons, because the chili that I bought, it just wasn't very spicy. It wasn't very hot. And so when we did having really helped them to understand the idea of managing difficult experiences, when they put the tiny, and I chopped them up super small, when they put the tiny bit of chili here on the lip, it didn't really give much of a sensation for them to work with. And actually they were quite disappointed, because I felt that the energy in the lesson was really, I felt like it was going really well. But when we came to actually the moment of delivery, they were a bit disappointed.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How students get quite psyched up about the fact that it's going to be a big thing, and then when it's not, it's quite
not. Yeah.
Bit of a damp squib. So I'm just curious then. So Richard there showed us his chili that he was using. What do you use, Chelsea, for the sort of going towards something that feels a bit difficult?
Oh, goodness. We have tried a few things, but we've decided to sort of accept for now, and we may change it the next time we go around. We keep adapting as we go. We've been using lemons, and unfortunately, many of the students loved it, and they became a badge of honor to just take the lemons and just enjoy them with relish. And I decided to let it go, really. I thought we have so many opportunities to observe stress and anxiety and difficulty and talking about the saber-toothed tiger chasing us. It's not the end of the world if they love it. I think that they can use their imagination. Sometimes I just have to supplement that desire to bring a sort of safe discomfort with anecdotes or suggestions about scenarios. And that's how I tend to get around it if they just are loving the thing that's supposed to make them uncomfortable.
What do you use, Faiy? What have you used in the past?
I have tended to use onions, and this was partly because I had a learning around using chili where I actually found out mid-lesson that one of my students had an allergy, and I was like, okay. And even though I'd asked ahead, that hadn't been communicated, and so it kind of just made me think, do you know what, as in that situation, I was teaching it externally just to be on the safe side. I've always just taken onion, just because there are less people, I think, on the whole. But this is one of the things that kind of like would happen to me, is that I could hear everywhere I went, people were like, oh, what's that smell? And even though I thought I'd contained it within my lovely little Tupperware boxes that I was carrying with me, this whiff was going with me everywhere I went. And of course, not such a surprise to the students when they would come in the room and they were like, what's that smell? And they were sort of guessing what we were going to be doing. And so, yeah, onions. I would go on.
There's a lovely moments though, I think, Faiy, in a way, in terms of we talk about school communities and whole school. And actually, these are the little ways, I think, in which the missed courses kind of get into the bloodstream of the school. So yesterday I had an interesting one where I was chopping my chilies in the staff room just before, my lesson was right after the break. In the break, I was chopping the chilies into their tiny little bits. And a teacher said, oh, what are you doing? And I explained to them what I was doing. And this was a teacher who didn't know we did this. And then by the end of the conversation, we were talking about, the next course that we might have for staff. And there was a degree of engagement. And so these, whether that's the smell of the onions or the checking with the houses about the allergies, these are the things I think that keep mindfulness in the bloodstream of a school.
Definitely, I totally agree with you. I just wondered as well, is there anything further that you would pay attention to, Chelsea, in terms of this session?
I think just bringing sort of trauma awareness, I think is probably one of the most important things, wanting to keep the mindfulness practice as a safe space for the students, making sure that they have access to this toolkit. And I think just going into that concept of safe discomfort, I think one of the things that was explored on the school mindfulness lead training was the idea of a sort of a big bag and a small bag. What sort of metaphorical bag are you bringing to your practice? And I think in order for all of the students to feel safe and to feel as though they can access this exercise, I think even if it feels a bit light touch for a majority, I think that from my students, I try to make sure that I make it really clear what that means and really give them guidance, especially students that may not be neurotypical. Just being really clear about, what might be safe and making it also very clear that they can opt out. Everything is optional, everything is invitational. They can try and then stop. They can leave the room if they feel that it's necessary, and just making sure that they know what the protocols are and that I just keep an eye on everybody, really.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Just to sort of, I forgot to say at the beginning that Chelsea is a school mindfulness lead for Mindfulness in Schools project in her setting, and that one of the things that we explore on that training, but also on our other trainings as well these days, is when we're talking about the big bag. Obviously that's the worst thing that might come to mind when you think about something difficult, and the light small bag being a smaller thing to explore, something that feels a bit safer, especially in a school space. I think that's really important, where children don't necessarily feel safe with each other, that you can put in that level of measure of safety for them. Yeah, really lovely to hear that. Thank you. And I know that in previous discussions, we've talked about like it not just being about exploring the tricky stuff. So I just wondered if you wouldn't mind saying a bit more about that, Chelsea.
Do you mean just looking at the good stuff, taking in the good stuff? Yeah, I think that's one of the phrases I really love about the Dot B program, and I try to bring it into any communications with parents, with students, and the wider school community, and reminding them it's not just we're not just reacting to problems, we're not just looking to cushion the blows of life. We are looking to be present. We're looking for opportunities. We are looking to direct attention even to the good stuff. And I think that this is a great opportunity to bring a little bit of joy and silliness, sometimes managed, but a little bit of silliness and curiosity. And I think I remember my own training with Richard, and the raisins, I think, were used, Richard, and it was the first time I had ever listened to the sounds of a raisin, and it was just delightful. And I think just showing the students that it doesn't all have to be sort of heavy or cerebral, and just having some fun. And when we do surveys at the end, it is one of the favorites of what they learn, and they're not going to forget it. And I think that's great.
Yeah, fantastic. Lovely to have that balance between showing that it helps with difficulty and also really helps us connect with joy. So just, yeah, great. And laughter, humour. I just wondered, I'm just curious, Richard, is there anything you'd kind of add there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think my problem with this lesson, particularly this lesson and lesson 7, is I think my lessons can get a bit too much fun, perhaps, and a bit too silly. And I let the energy, probably it's true of my teaching generally, I quite like working with the energy in a classroom. And I don't like it when it's completely quiet all the time in a normal lesson. I quite like the to and fro and the rapport that you have with the class. But I think in this one, it can go to, I was finding it could go too far. And actually, the worksheets that we've got in the teacher's book, I now use those all the time, which is after the excitement of the Malteser, get them to actually just pause and write down their responses. And then again, after the excitement and the buzz of having the chili, just pause and get them to write down their reflections. And those have been quite nice settlers in between the fun of the eating, which I hope improved the learning and brought an element of them being slightly more reflective rather than just swept away with the fun of the lesson.
Thank you. Do you use the worksheets, Chelsea?
I do with year 8s. We tend to use workbooks. So we might use digital copies in a OneNote and then have the students copy down the bits that we want them to really grab onto. So I think especially for younger students, trying to remember all of the things about physical sensations and associations with feelings, and that's quite useful. And I think, again, as Richard pointed out, getting them settled, I think especially if we have them after lunch or something at a difficult part of the day. And I find with my older students, for our context, it's just the students I have in front of me. Typically, I think conversation just works a little bit better for us. And so I'll use the worksheets as a sort of prompt, with the exception of the possibilities worksheet. I always print that one out and we use it for discussion. I will give them access in assignments or teams to worksheets as well. But I find that for us, the time just goes so quickly in the lessons. I very rarely feel like I have enough time to sit with a worksheet, but it's something that I'm still learning. Every time I go through, I'm looking for new ways to do things. And I think it's an option that I'm definitely going to keep open. I think it really does depend on the students in front of us.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally hear that around this lesson being one of those very lively lessons. And just to say, as an external teacher, I always give the teachers a little heads up that it can be lively and that I'm expecting it to be, and not to get too concerned if it does get where they may feel a bit concerned because I'm a visitor. Too lively, it's absolutely fine. My expectation is it will be like that. This is great. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for joining us for this one. And thank you again, Richard, as well.
Yeah, thank you, Faiy.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks for having me.